At its peak, Nokia made nearly half of every mobile phone sold on Earth. Not a third, not a quarter, almost half. 40% of the entire global market, 1 in every 2 phones. In the year 2000, Nokia employed over 55,000 people across 140 countries. Its brand was valued among the top 5 most recognized on the planet. It had invented the mobile world as we knew it. And then one Tuesday morning in January 2007, a man in a black turtleneck walked onto a stage in San Francisco. And everything Nokia had built started to die. Not because the iPhone was better, but because of what was happening inside Nokia long before Apple ever entered the room. This is the real story. Behind the empire, the rise and fall of Nokia. To understand how Nokia fell, you first have to understand how unlikely it was that Nokia ever rose at all. Because Nokia did not start as a technology company, it did not start in a garage, or a dorm room, or a Silicon Valley office. It started as a paper mill. In 1865, a Finnish mining engineer named Fredrik Idestam built a pulp mill on the banks of a river in southern Finland. He named the company after the town nearby, Nokia. For the next several decades, the company did what paper mills do. It made paper, then rubber boots, then tires, then cables, then televisions, then computers, then military equipment. Nokia was not a company with a vision. It was a company with a survival instinct, and it pivoted into whatever industry offered the best opportunity for growth. And that instinct, that willingness to completely reinvent itself, would eventually build one of the most dominant technology companies in human history. By 1967, Nokia had merged its paper, rubber, and cable operations into a single corporation, a sprawling Finnish conglomerate selling everything from toilet paper to telecom infrastructure. It was not glamorous, but it was alive. And then in 1979, Nokia made a bet that would change everything. It entered into a joint venture with a Scandinavian television manufacturer to build a company focused on radio telephones, mobile communication. 2 years later, Nokia helped launch the Nordic Mobile Telephone Network, the world's first international cellular telephone system, connecting Sweden, Denmark, Norway, and Finland. In one move, Nokia had gone from making rubber boots to building the infrastructure for the mobile age shortly after they launched the Mobira Senator, the world's first car phone. It weighed 10 kilograms. You needed a car just to carry it, but it worked, and people wanted it. Nokia had found its future. The man who would turn that future into a global empire was named Jorma Ollila. In 1992, Ollila became CEO of Nokia, and he did something most executives never have the courage to do. He looked at a giant, sprawling conglomerate, making dozens of products across a dozen industries, and he cut almost all of it. Rubber, gone. Paper, gone. Televisions, gone. Cables, gone. Everything that was not mobile telecommunications was sold, shuttered, or abandoned. Ollila was making a massive bet that mobile phones were not a niche product for businessmen in expensive cars, that they were the future of communication for everyone. He was right, and what followed was one of the most explosive corporate growth stories of the 20th century. In 1992, Nokia launched the 1011, the world's first mass-produced GSM mobile phone, compact, reliable, built for everyday people. It sold out in weeks. By 1994, Nokia listed on the New York Stock Exchange. Revenue exploded, each year more extraordinary than the last. By 1998, just 6 years after Ollila's strategic pivot, Nokia became the largest mobile phone manufacturer on Earth, surpassing Motorola, surpassing Ericsson, surpassing every competitor in every market. And the phones themselves became cultural objects. The Nokia 611 with its built-in game of Snake. The Nokia Communicator, a device with email, spreadsheets, and a full keyboard in 1996. Bill Gates reportedly had his team analyze the Communicator after seeing it at a tech conference. He was fascinated. And then in the year 2000, Nokia released the 3310. Monochrome screen, basic functions, nearly indestructible. It became the best-selling mobile phone in history. 250 million units sold. In a single decade, Nokia had done the impossible. A Finnish paper mill had become the defining technology company of its era. By 2007, Nokia controlled between 40 and 50% of the global mobile phone market, more than its 3 biggest competitors combined. Revenue in the billions, profits soaring, employees loyal. Brand recognized in every country on Earth. The empire was complete, or so it appeared. Here is what the world did not know. Inside Nokia, something had gone quietly and deeply wrong. The company that had reinvented itself from rubber boots to mobile phones had lost the one thing that made reinvention possible: honesty. As Nokia grew into a global giant, its internal culture transformed. The leadership became increasingly hierarchical. Managers were evaluated on hitting targets. Missing targets had consequences. And so, across every level of the organization, people stopped telling the truth. Middle managers knew that Symbian, Nokia's operating system, even was becoming outdated, that the software was difficult to develop for. That compared to what was emerging in Silicon Valley, Nokia's software was falling behind. But nobody said so, because saying so meant acknowledging failure. And in Nokia's culture of fear, failure was not tolerated, so the information stopped flowing upward. Good news reached the executives. Bad news got buried, and at the top of the company, the leadership genuinely believed they were still winning. They were looking at market share numbers, and the numbers said Nokia was dominant. What the numbers did not say was that the ground beneath the empire was already cracking. Then came January 9th, 2007. Steve Jobs took the stage at the Macworld conference in San Francisco. He held up a device the size of a playing card, a touchscreen, no buttons, an operating system built around applications, a camera, a browser, an iPod, a phone, all in one. He called it the iPhone. The audience went wild, and inside Nokia's headquarters in Espoo, Finland, the reaction was almost universally dismissive. Executives called it a niche product, a luxury toy for American consumers. Nokia's strength was in emerging markets: India, China, Africa, the Middle East, places where the iPhone, priced at $499, was simply unaffordable. Nokia made cheap, durable phones for billions of people. Apple was making an expensive gadget for the wealthy few. Why would Nokia panic? The analysis was not entirely wrong. In 2007, the iPhone launched with just a 5% share of the smartphone market. Nokia still controlled the world, but the analysis missed the point entirely, because the iPhone was not just a better phone, it was a new category. A computer in your pocket, an ecosystem built around software and applications. And within a year, Google launched Android. Free for any manufacturer to use, open, flexible, developer-friendly. Now Apple and Google were building entire universes of software, millions of applications, games, maps, social networks, financial tools, an endless expanding digital environment that customers could live inside. Nokia had Symbian, an operating system that developers called a nightmare to build for. Clunky, outdated, impossible to adapt quickly. The engineers inside Nokia knew. They had known for years. Some had even built prototypes of touchscreen devices that predated the iPhone. Nokia had the technology, Nokia had the engineers. But the culture of fear that had taken root inside the company meant that nobody with the authority to act fully understood how urgent the situation had become. And while Nokia's leadership debated, the market moved with brutal speed. By 2010, the reality could no longer be denied. Nokia's smartphone market share was collapsing. The company that had once built the world's most beloved devices was now producing phones that felt like relics. The board made a desperate decision. They brought in an outsider to save the company. His name was Stephen Ilop, a Canadian executive who had been running Microsoft's business division, Nokia's first ever non-Finnish CEO. On his first full day in the job, Ilop walked the halls of Nokia's headquarters. He met engineers, he read internal reports, he sat with product teams, and what he saw shook him. In February 2011, Ilop sent an internal memo to all Nokia employees. It leaked to the press within hours. In it, he described Nokia as a man standing on a burning oil platform. Flames on every side. The only option was to jump. The memo was meant to shock the organization into action, to break the culture of denial that had paralyzed Nokia for years. Instead, it accelerated the collapse. The moment the memo became public, customers stopped buying Nokia phones. Why would you pay for a platform the CEO himself had just declared obsolete? Developers stopped building Nokia applications. Why invest in an ecosystem its own leader had called a burning building? Carriers started cutting Nokia orders. In a single memo, Ilop had destroyed what little confidence remained in the brand. And his solution made it worse. Rather than adopting Android, which was already winning, Ilop announced a sweeping partnership with Microsoft. Nokia devices would run Windows Phone exclusively, no Android. The reasoning seemed logical on paper. Android was becoming dominated by Samsung. Nokia would be just another hardware maker in a crowded pool. Windows Phone offered Nokia the chance to be the exclusive champion of a different ecosystem, a partnership, a unique position, a third option for consumers. But the apps were not there. The developers were not interested. Windows Phone's App Store was a fraction of Android or iOS, and consumers made their choice fast. Nokia's Lumia phones, running Windows Phone, were beautifully built. The hardware was widely praised. But without apps, beautiful hardware meant nothing. The market had already decided. iOS and Android had won. Everything else was irrelevant. Nokia's market share did not just fall, it evaporated. In just 6 years, the market value of Nokia declined by approximately 90%. A company that had commanded half the world's mobile market was now worth a fraction of what it once was. In September 2013, Nokia sold its entire mobile phone division to Microsoft for $7.2 billion, a number that sounds large. Until you realize that at its peak, Nokia had been worth nearly 30 times that. The deal included roughly 32,000 employees transferred to Microsoft. 32,000 people whose careers, whose identities, whose professional lives had been built inside Nokia, gone in a single transaction. When the deal was announced, Stephen Elop looked into the cameras and said something that has echoed through business schools ever since. He said, "We didn't do anything wrong, but somehow we lost." It was the most honest and the most devastating statement in the history of modern business, because it was almost true. Nokia had not committed fraud. Nokia had not been reckless with money. Nokia had not been caught in a scandal. They had simply refused to face an uncomfortable truth. For too long, Microsoft acquired the phone division, and then proceeded to write off $7.6 billion on the deal just 2 years later. The Nokia phone business collapsed under Microsoft's ownership exactly as quickly as it had under Nokia's. By 2016, Microsoft sold what remained of the Nokia device business for just $350 million. A company that had once been worth more than $100 billion sold for less than the budget of a mid-size Hollywood film. But the Nokia story does not end in total destruction. The part of Nokia that survived was the part most people forgot existed: the network infrastructure business, the patents, the technology licensing. Today, Nokia is a major player in building the global 5G network. Its patents are licensed by Apple, Samsung, and every other major smartphone manufacturer. The company still earns hundreds of millions of dollars per year in royalties from the very companies that replaced it. Nokia did not disappear, it transformed again for the second time in its history, from paper mill to mobile empire, from mobile empire to invisible infrastructure. The name still exists, the business still runs, but the Nokia that defined the mobile age for an entire generation is gone. And this is what the Nokia story teaches every empire builder who is willing to listen. Nokia did not lose because of the iPhone. The iPhone just exposed what was already broken. They lost because success had turned into arrogance, because growth had turned into rigidity, because the culture that once made Nokia willing to pivot from rubber boots to mobile phones had been replaced by a culture that punished anyone who questioned the direction. Nokia's engineers had touchscreen prototypes before Apple launched the iPhone. Let that land. Nokia had the technology, they had the talent, they had the resources, they had the market position. What they did not have was a leadership willing to hear the truth. When the middle managers said Symbian was failing, the executives heard something else. When the engineers showed prototypes of what was possible, the board focused on protecting what already existed. When the market screamed that everything was changing, Nokia looked at its market share numbers and told itself the storm would pass. It did not pass, it rewrote the entire industry. And Nokia was left building phones for a world that no longer existed. Every empire reaches a moment where the past and the future stand at opposite ends of the room, and the empire has to choose which one to walk toward. Nokia had built itself by choosing the future, from paper to rubber, from rubber to cables, from cables to mobile phones. Every pivot seemed impossible until they made it, and then, at the most important pivot of all, they chose the past, because the past felt safe, because the past was profitable, because the past was what the numbers said was working. And by the time they realized the numbers were lying to them, Apple and Android had already won. The burning platform was not a memo, it was reality. Nokia just refused to see it until it was too late. Thank you for watching Behind the Empire. If you found this story valuable, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who would enjoy it. Comment below with the next company you want us to break down. And follow us for more stories on how billion-dollar empires are built and destroyed.